Welcome back to the Royal Griot, the home of African storytelling where we explore the depths of love, betrayal, and redemption. We are so grateful for your support. You are the heartbeat of this channel. Comment below. Where are you watching from today? The silence in the nursery was heavier than the humid Lagos air outside. My sudden appearance in the doorway had frozen time. I had just arrived from the airport, my private jet landing 3 hours earlier than scheduled. I wanted to surprise my wife. I wanted to kiss the belly that held my future. Instead, I was staring at a crime scene. Obinna? Chantel's voice cracked. It was the first time in 5 years I had heard her sound truly terrified. She dropped the shears. They clattered against the imported Italian marble floor, the sound echoing like a gunshot. I didn't look at her face. I couldn't take my eyes off her midsection. For months I had touched a prosthetic bump. I had sung lullabies to foam and silicone. Where is it? I asked, my voice dangerously low. Where is my son? Chantel took a step back, her hands covering her flat stomach. Baby, please, I can explain. The doctor said, my image, the empire needed a strong mother. I said, I roared, stepping fully into the room, my presence filling the space. Where is my son? On the floor, huddled in the corner near the gold-leafed crib I had commissioned from Milan, was the girl. I didn't even know her name. She was one of the invisible staff members who cleaned the mansion, the ones Chantel insisted remain unseen. She looked homeless, wearing a torn Ankara wrapper that had seen better days. Her arms were thin, too thin, but her belly was round and full with life. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with the kind of fear you see in a trapped animal. Sir, she whispered, her voice trembling. Please, don't let her hurt him. The room spun. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. Chantel hadn't just faked a pregnancy, she had enslaved a poor girl, a struggling soul, to carry my child in secret while she played the glowing matriarch for the tabloids. I turned to Chantel. The beautiful woman I had married, the face of my charity foundations, looked hideous in the nursery light. You hired a surrogate? I asked. Without telling me? She's not a surrogate, Obinna. She's a vessel. Chantel hissed, her fear turning into defensive venom. Look at her. She is trash from the village. Do you think I would let that sit at our table? I did this for us. I couldn't carry another one after the miscarriage, and you are obsessed with your legacy. So you bought one? I walked toward her. You bought a human being? I gave her a roof over her head. She was abandoned by her family. I gave her a purpose. You were going to cut her, I said, looking at the shears on the floor. She was threatening to tell you. Chantel screamed. She wanted more money. She is a gold digger, Obinna, just like the rest of them. I looked at the girl on the floor. She wasn't asking for money. She was shielding her stomach with her bruised arms. She was protecting my blood. Something inside me, the part of me that the business world called cold-hearted, shattered. But it didn't break for Chantel. It broke for the stranger on the floor. Get out, I said. Chantel blinked. What? Get out of my house. Get out of my life. Leave the jewelry, leave the cards, leave the car keys. Walk out the gate. You can't be serious, she laughed nervously. I am your wife. The press is outside. The gala is tomorrow. You need me. I don't need a kidnapper, I said, pulling my phone from my pocket. I am calling the commissioner of police. You have 5 minutes before this becomes a criminal investigation instead of a divorce. Chantel's face went pale. She knew I didn't make idle threats. In the boardroom, I destroyed competitors who lied to me. In my home, the penalty would be worse. She looked at me, then at the girl, her eyes filled with pure hate. You will regret this, Obinna. You think you can raise a child with this gutter rat? She spat on the floor near the girl, gathered her silk robe, and stormed out. I stood there, my heart hammering against my ribs. The silence returned, but this time it was filled with the soft sobbing of the girl on the floor. I took a deep breath and knelt. My knees hit the hard marble. I, Obinna Okeke, the man who owned half the real estate in Lagos, knelt before a girl who owned nothing. What is your name? I asked gently. She flinched when I spoke. She tried to push herself further into the wall. Adanna, sir. Adanna, I repeated. It meant father's daughter. Adanna, look at me. She slowly lifted her head. Her lip was split. There was an old scar on her cheek, and a fresh bruise forming on her arm. But her eyes? They were a deep, soulful brown, filled with a resilience that humbled me. Is the baby mine? I asked. I needed to hear it. Yes, sir, she whispered. Madam, she took me from the village clinic. She said if I carried the baby she would pay for my mother's surgery. But she never paid. And now my mother is dead. Tears spilled down her cheeks, washing away the dust on her face. Rage, hot and blinding, surged through me again. Chantel had not only deceived me, she had preyed on the desperate. She had used this girl's tragedy to secure her own position in my fortune. I am so sorry, I said, and for the first time in years I meant it. You are safe now. No one will ever hurt you again. I reached out a hand to help her up. She hesitated, looking at my hand like it was a foreign object. My hands were manicured, soft from lotion and easy living. Hers were rough, calloused from labor. When she finally placed her hand in mine, the contrast was stark. Can you stand? I asked. She nodded and tried to push herself up, but as soon as she put weight on her legs, she gasped. Her face twisted in agony and she collapsed back into my arms. My back. She cried out, clutching her side. It hurts. Something is wrong. I looked down. On the pristine white marble, a dark crimson stain was spreading beneath her. Panic, cold and sharp, seized my chest. This wasn't just labor. This was something else. Adanna, I shouted. I scooped her up into my arms. She was terrifyingly light except for the weight of the baby. Chief. My head of security, Musa, burst into the room, gun drawn, having heard the commotion. He froze when he saw me holding the maid. Prepare the car. I yelled, rushing past him into the hallway. Forget the limousine. Get the SUV. We are going to the hospital. Now. I ran down the grand staircase, Adanna's head lolling against my shoulder. She was losing consciousness. Please, she murmured, her voice fading. Save him. Don't worry about me. Just save him. I am going to save both of you, I promised, bursting out the front door into the heavy night air. The lights of the compound reflected off the wet pavement. Musa had the door open before I even reached the driveway. I slid into the back seat, cradling her. Drive, I ordered. As the car sped toward the gates, leaving the mansion behind, I looked down at Adanna. She had passed out. Her skin was cold. The blood was soaking into my expensive suit, but I didn't care. I pulled out my phone and dialed my private doctor. Dr. Balogun, I barked. I am coming in. Emergency. Obstetric trauma. And Balogun, if she dies, the hospital goes down with her. I hung up and held her hand. It was limp. Just as we hit the highway, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Chantel. You think you've won? You have no idea who that girl really is. Ask her about the fire in the village. Ask her why she was really abandoned. I looked at the message, then at the unconscious girl who looked like an angel broken by the world. Was it another lie? Or had I just let a mysterious stranger with a dark past into the heart of my life? The car swerved around traffic, the siren wailing, but all I could hear was the fading rhythm of her breathing. The automatic doors of St. Nicholas Private Hospital flew open as Musa kicked them. I rushed in, the weight of 2 lives in my arms. Adanna was limp, her head rolling back against my shoulder, her blood soaking through my bespoke suit and dripping onto the sterile white tiles. Help! I roared, my voice cracking in a way it never did in the boardroom. I need a stretcher. Now. Nurses froze. A receptionist looked up, eyes wide. They saw the blood. Then they saw my face. They recognized Obinna Okeke. Chaos erupted. A gurney was wheeled over. Hands, too many hands, grabbed Adanna from me. She's hemorrhaging, a doctor shouted, checking her vitals. BP is dropping. Get the OR ready. Fetal heart rate is weak. They began to wheel her away, the wheels squeaking frantically on the floor. I started to follow, my hand still reaching for her, but a firm hand pressed against my chest. Sir, you cannot go past this point, Dr. Balogun said, his face grim behind his glasses. He had arrived seconds after us. That is my son in there, Balogun, I snarled, grabbing his scrub top. And that girl, save her. Do you understand me? Money is not an object. If she dies, you answer to me. We will do our best, Chief, he said, gently removing my hand. But you need to pray. She has lost a lot of blood. The double doors swung shut, swallowing them. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood there, alone in the bright corridor, looking down at my clothes. My hands were stained crimson. The metallic smell of blood filled my nose. I felt dizzy, not from the sight but from the terrifying lack of control. I controlled markets. I controlled politicians. I could not control this. I walked to the VIP waiting area, ignoring the stares of the staff. I collapsed into a leather chair and put my head in my hands. Ask her about the fire in the village. Chantel's text message burned in my mind. Why would she say that? Why now? I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely type. I dialed Musa, who was standing guard outside the hospital entrance. Musa, I said, my voice rasping. I need you to find out everything about a girl named Adanna. From a village called. I paused. I didn't even know her village. Check the staff record Chantel kept. Find out where she came from. And find out about a fire. Yes, sir. Consider it done. I sat back, staring at the clock on the wall. The minutes dragged like hours. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Every second was a heartbeat I wasn't sure Adanna still had. I thought about her face in the nursery. The fear. The resignation. She hadn't asked for diamonds or a mansion. She had asked me to save the baby. In a world full of people who wanted a piece of my fortune, she was the first person in years who seemed to care about something other than herself. 30 minutes passed. Then an hour. My phone buzzed. It was my lawyer, Jide. Obinna. Jide sounded frantic. I'm seeing reports. Chantel has released a statement to the press. She's claiming she was attacked. She's claiming a mentally unstable maid tried to harm her and the baby, and you, in a state of confusion, sided with the help. I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Let her talk. When I am done with her, she won't even be able to get a job sweeping streets in Lagos. It's not just talk, Obinna. She's filed a restraining order against the girl. And she's frozen the joint accounts. The hospital bill, if they try to run your card connected to the family trust, it will decline. I have my own accounts, Jide. Fix it. And get the divorce papers ready. I want them served to her before breakfast. I hung up, fury simmering in my veins. Chantel was playing a dangerous game. She was betting on my pride. She thought I would cover up the scandal to save the Okeke empire. She didn't realize that tonight the empire meant nothing to me. Suddenly the double doors opened. Dr. Balogun walked out. He pulled off his surgical cap, wiping sweat from his brow. His expression was unreadable. I shot up from the chair. Well? It's a boy, Balogun said softly. The air left my lungs. A son. I had a son. He is small, Balogun continued. Premature respiratory distress. But he is fighting. He is in the NICU. And Adanna? I asked, dread coiling in my stomach. Balogun sighed. It was a uterine rupture. A result of, likely physical trauma or extreme stress. We stopped the bleeding, but she went into shock. She is in a coma, Obinna. We don't know if she will wake up. The relief of my son's birth collided with the guilt of Adanna's condition. Physical trauma. That meant Chantel. I want to see him, I said. Balogun nodded and led me down the hall. We passed the sterile rooms, the smell of antiseptic sharp in the air. We stopped at a large glass window. Incubator 4, Balogun pointed. I stepped closer to the glass. There, hooked up to tubes and wires, was a tiny, fragile human being. His skin was wrinkled, his chest rising and falling rapidly. He was so small he could fit in the palm of my hand. My son. Tears, hot and unfamiliar, pricked my eyes. I pressed my hand against the glass. I am here, I whispered. Papa is here. I felt a shifting presence beside me. It was Musa. He looked uneasy. Chief, he whispered. I found the file. Adanna's village is Mwahia. There was an incident 3 years ago. I didn't take my eyes off my son. What incident? A house fire. It killed her father and her younger brother. Her mother survived but was badly burned. That was the surgery Chantel promised to pay for. A tragic accident, I murmured. The police report didn't call it an accident, sir, Musa said, his voice dropping lower. They suspected arson. The villagers, they blamed Adanna. They said she was cursed. They ran her out of town. That's how she ended up on the streets before Madame Chantel found her. I turned to look at Musa. They blamed a teenage girl for burning her own family? Yes, sir. And there is an outstanding warrant for questioning. If the police find out she is here. My blood ran cold. Chantel knew. That's why she felt safe treating Adanna like a slave. She held the threat of prison over the girl's head. It was blackmail. Pure evil blackmail. Make sure no one enters this wing, I ordered. No police. No press. No Chantel. It might be too late for that, Musa said, looking down the hallway. At the end of the corridor, 2 uniformed police officers were walking toward us, led by a woman in a sharp business suit, Chantel's personal attorney. I squared my shoulders. I was Obinna Okeke. I had faced hostile takeovers and union strikes. I would not let them take the woman who saved my son. I walked to meet them, blocking the path to Adanna's room. Mr. Okeke, the attorney said, her smile tight and fake. We are here to collect the surrogate. Mrs. Okeke has raised concerns about the safety of the child. And these officers are here regarding an old case. The child is my son, I said, my voice booming in the quiet hallway. And that girl is under my protection. Sir, one of the officers stepped forward, holding a pair of handcuffs. We have received a tip that a fugitive is in this hospital. Adanna Namdi. Suspected of double homicide by arson. We need to take her into custody. She is in a coma. I shouted. If you move her, she dies. That is not our problem, sir, the officer said, reaching for his radio. The law is the law. And I am the law in this city. I stepped closer, towering over the officer. You touch her and I will have your badges by morning. Do you know who I am? The officer hesitated. He looked at the attorney, then at me. Suddenly, a piercing alarm began to ring from inside the NICU behind me. Red lights flashed. Nurses started running. Code blue. NICU. Incubator 4, a voice screamed over the intercom. My heart stopped. Incubator 4. My son. I spun around, ignoring the police, and ran back to the window. Doctors were swarming the tiny plastic box. One was performing CPR with 2 fingers on my son's chest. No, I gasped, slamming my hands against the glass. No, no, no. He needs blood, a doctor shouted from inside the room. The transfusion isn't working. We need a direct donor. Where is the mother? I froze. The mother. Chantel wasn't the mother. Adanna was. I looked at the room where Adanna lay in a coma, guarded by police who wanted to drag her to jail. Then I looked at my dying son. I turned back to the officers and the attorney. You want her? I said, my eyes wild. You have to go through me. Because she is the only one who can save him. The attorney smirked. Obinna, be reasonable. The girl is a murderer. Let the boy go. You can always buy another one. Something snapped. The last thread of civility I held onto broke. I didn't think. I lunged. Musa's arms were like iron bands around my chest. I struggled, growling like a wounded lion, desperate to reach the woman who had called my son a product meant to be bought and sold. Chief. Stop. Musa hissed in my ear. Assaulting a lawyer in front of the police? You will be in a cell before the baby takes his next breath. Think, Oga. Think. His words cut through the red haze of my rage. I stopped fighting, my chest heaving. I smoothed my suit jacket, though it was ruined with blood. I looked at the attorney, Chantel's mouthpiece, who had retreated behind the 2 officers, her smirk replaced by a look of genuine alarm. Dr. Balogun. I turned my back on them. The transfusion. Now. We need consent, Balogun said, his voice tight. She is unconscious. Legally. I am the father. I shouted. And if she is under arrest, as these officers claim, then she is a ward of the state. Officer, I turned to the policeman who held the handcuffs. If that baby dies because you delayed a medical procedure, I will sue the police force for negligence so severe your grandchildren will be paying the debt. Do you want that on your record? The officer looked at the lawyer, then at the dying baby behind the glass, and finally at me. He swallowed hard. Proceed, doctor, the officer said, lowering the handcuffs. But we are not leaving this door. The next hour was a blur of terrified activity. They wheeled Adanna's comatose body into the sterile room next to the NICU. I watched through the observation window as they connected a line from her arm. It was a primitive, desperate measure, but there was no time for blood banks to process the request. They were taking life directly from her and giving it to him. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass. Adanna, pale as a ghost, lay still. The tube ran red, a dark, rich crimson line connecting her to the incubator. The vessel Chantel had called her. I looked at her face. Even in sleep, even with the oxygen mask, she looked peaceful. She didn't look like an arsonist. She didn't look like a murderer. She looked like a child herself, forced to carry the weight of the world. Slowly, the monitor on the incubator changed. The erratic beeping slowed into a steady rhythm. Beep, beep, beep. He's stabilizing, Dr. Balogun's voice came over the intercom. It's a miracle. The antibodies, they are a perfect match. I slid down the wall until I hit the floor. The adrenaline crashed, leaving me hollowed out. I sat on the hospital linoleum, knees drawn to my chest, weeping silently. I, the man who commanded skyscrapers to be built, was reduced to tears by the steady beep of a machine. The corridor was quiet now. The police officers stood guard at the end of the hall, whispering to each other. The lawyer had left to file more poison, no doubt. Chief. Musa stood over me. He held a cup of lukewarm coffee from the vending machine. "Drink," he said gently. I took it. My hands were still shaking. "Is she going to wake up?" "Balogun says her vitals are improving." "But—" Musa hesitated. "The police. They are waiting for her eyes to open. The moment she is conscious, they will arrest her." "I won't let them take her to a cell," I said, sipping the bitter coffee. "Not after this. They have a warrant, sir. Murder is not a small thing." "Tell me about the fire," I said, my voice low. "Tell me what you found." Musa sat next to me on the floor, an unusual breach of protocol that showed just how far our world had shifted tonight. He opened a folder on his tablet. "It happened 3 years ago in Umwahia. A small compound. Her father, Mr. Namdi, refused to sell his land to a developer. He was stubborn. Traditional. One night the house went up in flames. The father and the youngest son died. The mother survived but needed expensive skin grafts. And they blamed Adanna? She was the only one unhurt. She was found outside watching the house burn. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. The villagers said she was possessed. The police said she set the fire to get the insurance money, except there was no insurance. Only the land value." "Who was the developer?" I asked, a cold suspicion forming in my gut. Musa scrolled down. "A shell company. Apex Horizon Limited." I dug into the registry. "The directors are listed as proxies, but the funding—" He looked at me, his eyes dark. "The funding came from a subsidiary of the Okeke Group." I froze. The coffee cup crumpled in my hand. "My company?" I whispered. "Not yours directly, sir. It was the charitable arm. The Chantel Okeke Foundation for Rural Development." The world tilted. Chantel didn't just find a poor girl. She created one. She had burned a family to the ground to acquire land for her vanity projects, and when the survivor, Adanna, was left destitute and branded a witch, Chantel swooped in like a savior. She enslaved the girl whose life she had destroyed. "She knew," I whispered, the horror rising like bile. "She knew Adanna was innocent because Chantel was the one who lit the match." "We can't prove it," Musa warned. "Not yet. The paperwork is buried deep. If you accuse her now, she will sue you for defamation and destroy the company's stock. We need Adanna to speak. We need to know what she saw that night." I looked through the glass at Adanna. She wasn't just a surrogate. She was a victim of my own household. My money, my name had been used to burn her life down. And yet she had carried my son. She had given her blood to save him. I felt a shame so deep it burned. I had been so busy building my empire, flying in my private jet, attending galas, that I hadn't seen the monster sleeping in my bed. "Sir," a nurse interrupted, looking nervous. "Excuse me. We tried to process the admission deposit for the young lady and the baby." "Yes," I said, standing up, trying to regain my composure. "The card was declined. Insufficient funds." I stared at her. "That is a black card. It has no limit." "The bank said the account has been frozen due to pending litigation regarding family assets." Chantel. She had moved fast. She had frozen the joint accounts and likely flagged my personal ones as disputed marital assets. I will sort it out," I stammered. For the first time in 20 years, I felt the cold sting of being broke. The nurse looked at my bloody suit, my exhausted face. She softened. "Don't worry, sir. We won't stop treatment. But admin will be on my neck by morning." She walked away. I checked my pockets. I had my wallet, but my cash was in the safe at home. A home I couldn't go back to. I had a Rolex on my wrist worth more than this hospital wing. I took the watch off. "Musa," I handed him the gold timepiece. "Pawn it. Get cash. Pay the deposit. Buy food. We are not leaving this hospital." Musa looked at the watch, then at me. He nodded solemnly. "Yes, boss." He left. I was alone again. I walked into the room where Adanna lay. The police officer at the door stepped forward, but I held up a hand. "I'm just sitting with her. She is not going anywhere." I pulled a chair next to her bed. The rhythmic whoosh of the ventilator was the only sound. I looked at her hands, rough, scarred, the nails short and clean. I took one of her hands in mine. It was warm. "I am sorry," I whispered into the silence. "I am so sorry, Adanna. I didn't know." I sat there for hours as the night turned into the gray light of dawn. I watched her chest rise and fall. I watched the bag of blood empty into her veins. Around 6 a.m., her fingers twitched in mine. I sat up straight. "Adanna?" Her eyelids fluttered. She groaned, a low sound of pain. Slowly her eyes opened. They were hazy, unfocused. She looked at the ceiling, then turned her head and saw me. Panic flared in her eyes. She tried to sit up, but the tubes held her back. "The baby," she rasped, her voice like sandpaper. "Where?" "He is safe," I said quickly, squeezing her hand. "You saved him. He is sleeping right next door." She slumped back, relief washing over her face. Then she remembered. She looked down at her hospital gown, then at the door where the silhouette of the police officer was visible through the frosted glass. "They are here," she whispered. "The police?" "Yes," I said. "But they won't take you. I won't let them." "You don't understand," she said, tears pooling in her eyes. "I have to go with them. If I don't, she will kill him." "Kill who?" "My brother," she sobbed. "My little brother, Keen. He didn't die in the fire. Chantel. She has him. She put him in a boarding school in the north. She said if I ever told the truth about the fire, she would stop paying his fees and throw him onto the street. Or worse." My jaw tightened until it hurt. Chantel didn't just kill her family, she held the survivor hostage. "She lied to you," I said, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. "She owns the company that burned your house, Adanna. She caused the fire." Adanna's eyes went wide. The shock was absolute. "No, she saved me. She created the disaster so she could play the savior. It is a game to her. A power struggle." Adanna began to shake. A deep, guttural wail built in her chest. It was the sound of a heart breaking, of trust completely shattered. "She took everything," Adanna cried. "My home. My mother. My freedom. She will not take your future," I vowed. "And she will not take my son." Suddenly the door opened. The police officer stepped in, handcuffs in hand. "She is awake," the officer said flatly. "Adanna Namdi, you are under arrest for the murder of—" "Wait," I stood up, blocking the bed. "Step aside, Mr. Okeke," the officer warned. "Or you will be arrested for obstruction of justice." Adanna reached out and grabbed my wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "Let them take me," she said, her eyes now hard, the softness replaced by a steely resolve I hadn't seen before. "What?" "No." I looked at her. "I will go," she said to the officer. Then she looked at me, her gaze piercing. "But you have to promise me one thing, sir." "Anything," I said. "Don't let her near the baby. And find Keen. Find my brother." "I promise," I said. "I will bring him to you." She nodded and held out her wrists. The officer clicked the cold metal cuffs onto her thin arms. The sound was sickening. "Get up," the officer ordered. "She can't walk." I protested. "She just had surgery." "We have a wheelchair," the officer said indifferently. They dragged her out of the bed. She winced in pain but didn't cry out. They placed her in the wheelchair and began to wheel her away. As they reached the door, the elevator dinged. Chantel stepped out. She was dressed in a white designer suit, looking fresh and untouched, followed by a camera crew. She spotted us, me in my bloodied suit, Adanna in handcuffs. Chantel gasped, a theatrical hand to her chest. The cameras flashed. "Oh, thank God," she cried out for the cameras. "They caught the monster who tried to kill my baby." Adanna looked at Chantel. For the first time she didn't look down. She looked her tormentor in the eye. "I am not the monster," Adanna said, her voice quiet but clear in the hallway. Chantel's smile didn't falter, but her eyes went cold. She leaned in as she passed the wheelchair. "Enjoy, prison rat. I hope you survive long enough to see me raise my son." Chantel walked past her toward the NICU, reaching for the door handle to my son's room. "Don't touch that door," I said. My voice was low, deadly. Chantel stopped and turned to the cameras. "My husband, he is in shock. He has been brainwashed by this criminal." She reached for the handle again. I didn't care about the cameras. I didn't care about the police. I stepped between her and the door. "Get away from my son." Chantel laughed, a high tinkling sound. "Or what, Obinna? You have no money. You have no cards. You are powerless. This is my hospital wing. I paid for it." She was right. I was stripped bare. But as I looked at Adanna being wheeled into the elevator, and my son fighting for life in the box, I realized I had one thing left. The truth. I turned to the camera crew. "Turn those cameras on," I said. "I have a statement." Chantel's smile faltered. The red lights of the cameras blinked like predatory eyes. Chantel stood there, the grieving mother act perfected, waiting for me to explode. She wanted me to scream. She wanted the angry, unstable husband clip that would play on every news channel in Lagos, sealing her custody case in my ruin. I looked at the lens. Then I looked at her. I took a deep breath, channeling every ounce of cold-hearted discipline I had learned in 3 decades of boardroom wars. "Turn them off," I said calmly. "Mr. Okeke, do you have a comment on the attempted murder of your unborn child?" a reporter shouted, shoving a microphone in my face. I stepped closer to the lens, my face filling the frame. "My comment is this: my son is fighting for his life. Anyone who turns this tragedy into a circus will be sued for privacy violations so severe you will lose your broadcasting license by noon. Cut the feed." The authority in my voice was absolute. Even without money, I was still the Lion of Lagos. The cameramen lowered their gear, intimidated. Chantel's smile vanished. "You can't silence me, Obinna." I stepped in close, invading her personal space, lowering my voice to a whisper only she could hear. "I know about Keen." Chantel flinched. It was micro-expression, a tiny twitch of her left eye, but it was enough. "I don't know what you're talking about," she hissed, clutching her purse tighter. "The brother you kidnapped," I continued, my voice ice cold. "The leverage you used to turn an innocent girl into your slave. I'm going to find him, Chantel. And when I do, I won't just divorce you. I will bury you." "Good luck," she sneered, regaining her composure. "You have no resources. You are a king without a kingdom. And that girl? She will plead guilty within the hour. I made sure her public defender knows what happens to Keen if she doesn't." She turned on her heel and marched toward the elevators, her heels clicking a rhythm of war. I watched her go, my fists clenched. She was right about one thing. The clock was ticking. "Musa," I turned to my security chief, who was still holding the pawn shop receipt for my Rolex. "We have work to do." "Where to, boss?" "The accounts are still frozen. The SUV has been remotely disabled by the leasing company." "We don't need the SUV," I said, loosening my tie. "Do you still have that old Toyota Corolla you use for undercover work?" Musa grinned. "It has no AC and the suspension is bad." "Perfect. Bring it around." An hour later, I was sitting in the passenger seat of a rusted 2008 Corolla, bouncing over the potholes of the mainland. I had traded my Italian suit jacket for a plain t-shirt Musa had in his trunk. I looked less like a billionaire and more like a man struggling to survive. In a way I was. "The address you found?" I shouted over the noise of the engine. "Are you sure?" "It's not a boarding school, Chief," Musa said, swerving to avoid a Kiki Napep. "It's a youth rehabilitation center, in Ikorodu. Funded by the foundation. On paper it helps troubled boys. In reality, it's a warehouse for unwanted children." My stomach churned. I had signed the checks for that foundation. I had smiled at the galas while Chantel gave speeches about saving the future. I had funded my own wife's human trafficking ring. "Drive faster," I ordered. We arrived at the facility 40 minutes later. It was a grim concrete compound surrounded by high walls and barbed wire. The sign out front was faded. "The Chantel Okeke Home for Boys." I got out of the car. The heat was stifling. 2 guards stood at the iron gate, looking bored. "Open the gate," I commanded, walking up to them. One guard laughed. "Who are you?" "We don't have visitors today." "I am Obinna Okeke. That sign bears my name." "Open it." The guard squinted at me. He recognized the face, but the t-shirt and the beat-up car confused him. "Oga, you look like him, but Mr. Okeke comes in a helicopter. You came in a bucket. Get lost before we beat you." He reached for his baton. I didn't flinch. "Musa." Musa moved. It was a blur of motion. In 3 seconds both guards were on the ground, groaning, their batons lying in the dust. Musa dusted off his hands and pressed the button to open the gate. "After you, sir." We stormed into the main building. It smelled of bleach and misery. A heavy-set matron looked up from a desk, her eyes widening as she saw us. "Where is Keen Namdi?" I demanded. I cannot release a student without Mrs. Okeke's authorization," she stammered, reaching for the phone. I slammed my hand down on the phone, shattering the plastic casing. "Listen to me." I leaned over the desk, my eyes burning with the power struggle I was winning. "Mrs. Okeke is not here. I am. And I am the man who pays your salary. If you do not bring the boy to me in 2 minutes, I will have the police tear this place apart brick by brick. I will find every embezzled naira, every phantom student. You will rot in Kirikiri prison." It was a bluff. I had no police. I had no money. But she didn't know that. She only saw the empire behind my eyes. She crumbled. He is in the solitary wing. Room 4. I ran. The hallway was dark. I found room 4 and kicked the door open. Inside, huddled on a thin mattress, was a boy of about 10. He looked just like Adanna. The same wide, fearful eyes. He was thin, wearing dirty clothes, holding a tattered book. "Keen?" I asked softly. He flinched, pulling his knees to his chest. "Please, I didn't steal the bread. Don't hit me." My heart broke. "No one is going to hit you. I am a friend of Adanna. I am here to take you to her." "Adanna?" His face lit up with a fragile hope. "Sister is coming?" "Yes. We are going to her." I extended my hand. He hesitated, then took it. I lifted him up, swinging him onto my back like I used to do with my nephews. "Let's go home," I whispered. We walked out of the building, Musa flanking us. The guards were still on the ground. The matron was hiding under her desk. As we got back into the Corolla, my phone buzzed. It was Jide, my lawyer. "Obinna?" Jide sounded breathless. "Where are you?" "I have the boy. I have Keen." "That's good, but you need to get to the courthouse. Now." "What?" "The arraignment isn't until tomorrow." "Chantel moved it up," Jide shouted. "She pulled strings with the judge. They are arraigning Adanna in 30 minutes. And Obinna, the public defender, just told me she plans to plead guilty." "What?" "She thinks her brother is still in danger. Chantel visited her in the holding cell 10 minutes ago. She told Adanna that if she doesn't confess to the arson and the attempted murder of the baby, Keen will disappear tonight. She is signing her life away to save him." I realized the horror washing over me. She is going to accept a life sentence for a crime she didn't commit. "You have 20 minutes before the judge accepts the plea," Jide warned. "Traffic is bad, Obinna. If you're not here." "I'm coming." I hung up and looked at Musa. "The High Court. Lagos Island." "Boss, that's across the third mainland bridge." "In this traffic?" "It's impossible." I looked at Keen in the back seat, clutching his book, trusting me. I thought of Adanna in handcuffs, alone, surrounded by wolves, ready to sacrifice herself again. "It is not impossible," I said, a dangerous calm settling over me. "Do you remember the shortcut through the market? The one we took when we were dodging the kidnappers in '99. Musa's eyes widened. "Through Idamota Market?" "It is chaos, sir. The car won't make it." "Then we drive until it dies and we run the rest," I said. "Drive." Musa slammed his foot on the gas. The Corolla roared, its engine protesting as we sped toward the bridge. We wove through traffic, horns blaring. We hit the market, the car scattering chickens and vendors who cursed us until they saw the desperation in Musa's driving. 15 minutes left. We were stuck behind a lorry carrying cement. "Ram it," I said. "Sir?" "Push it out of the way." Musa gritted his teeth and accelerated. The Corolla slammed into the bumper of the lorry, metal crunching. The lorry driver swerved in shock, opening a gap. We shot through. 10 minutes. Smoke started pouring from the hood of the Corolla. "She's overheating," Musa yelled. "Keep going." We were at the foot of the bridge leading to the island. The courthouse was visible in the distance, a white pillar of justice that was about to commit a grave injustice. 5 minutes. The car sputtered, coughed, and died. "Engine block cracked," Musa said, hitting the steering wheel. I kicked the door open. "Stay with the boy, Musa. Guard him with your life." "Sir? What are you doing?" I grabbed my briefcase, kicked off my expensive Italian loafers which were slipping on the asphalt, and started to run. I ran barefoot on the hot tar of the Lagos streets. I ran past hawkers, past beggars, past businessmen in air-conditioned cars. My lungs burned. My feet bled. I was Obinna Okeke. I had private jets. I had a fortune. But today I was just a man running for the truth. I saw the courthouse steps. I checked my watch. 1 minute. I burst through the security checkpoint, ignoring the metal detector screaming. "Stop him," a guard shouted. I didn't stop. I sprinted down the marble hall toward courtroom 4. I slammed the heavy oak doors open just as the judge banged his gavel. "Adanna Namdi," the judge intoned, looking down at the small, frail figure in the orange jumpsuit. "You have entered a plea of guilty. Do you understand that this carries a sentence of objection?" I screamed, my voice echoing off the high ceiling. The entire courtroom turned. Chantel was in the front row, looking triumphant. Adanna was in the dock, tears streaming down her face, a pen hovering over the confession papers. I stood there, barefoot, sweating, my t-shirt torn, looking like a madman. "Mr. Okeke?" The judge frowned. "This is a closed hearing. She is innocent," I gasped, walking down the aisle. "And her plea is coerced." Chantel stood up. "Your Honor, my husband is mentally unstable. Look at him. He is having a breakdown." I ignored her. I looked straight at Adanna. She looked terrified. Adanna, I said breathless. Don't sign it. He is keen, she whispered looking at Chantel. No, I pulled out my phone. I dialed Musa on FaceTime and held the screen up to the glass partition of the dock. On the screen, Keen was sitting in the back of the broken-down Corolla, eating a gala sausage roll. Sister. Keen's voice came through the speaker. Sister, the nice man saved me. Adanna stared at the screen. Her hand covered her mouth. The pen dropped from her fingers. She looked up at the judge, her eyes blazing with a fire that could burn the world down. I take it back, she said, her voice ringing clear. I plead not guilty. And I want to report a kidnapping. Chantel's face went white. I turned to my wife. Game over. But just then the courtroom doors opened again. 6 police officers marched in. But they weren't coming for Chantel. They were coming for me. The lead officer pointed at me. Obinna Okeke, you are under arrest for the assault of the guards at the Ikorodu facility and for aiding and abetting a fugitive. Chantel began to smile again. A cruel, twisted smile. You didn't think I would leave the facility unguarded, did you, darling? She whispered as the officers grabbed my arms. You saved the boy, but who is going to save you? The metal cuffs bit into my wrists, but I barely felt them. The physical pain was nothing compared to the fire burning in my chest. I watched Chantel standing near the prosecutor's bench, smoothing her white skirt, looking like the picture of innocent grace. She had won. She had the money, the lawyers, and now the law on her side. Take him away, the judge ordered, looking down at his paperwork. We will resume the hearing for Ms. Namdi after the disturbances cleared. Wait. A voice boomed from the back of the courtroom. It wasn't a lawyer. It wasn't a policeman. It was Jide. And he wasn't alone. Walking behind him, looking terrified but resolute, was the matron from the Ikorodu Rehabilitation Center, the woman who had hidden Keen under her desk just an hour ago. And behind her, flanking her like bodyguards, were the 2 guards Musa and I had assaulted. Your Honor, Jide strode forward, his briefcase open. We have new evidence. And we have witnesses who wish to recant their statements regarding the alleged assault. Chantel's head snapped around. Her composure cracked. What is this? The hearing is for the girl, not my husband. They are connected, Mrs. Okeke, Jide said calmly. He turned to the judge. Your Honor, Mr. Okeke did not assault these men. He was preventing a felony in progress, the kidnapping and unlawful imprisonment of a minor, Kenechukwu Namdi. The judge peered over his glasses. Kidnapping? By whom? Jide pointed a finger straight at Chantel. By the plaintiff, Mrs. Chantel Okeke. A gasp rippled through the courtroom. The press, who had been barred from filming, were furiously scribbling in their notepads. This is absurd. Chantel shrieked, her voice losing its polished accent and slipping into the raw anger of the streets. That woman is a paid actor. I don't know her. The matron stepped forward, her hands trembling. She looked at me, then at Chantel. She pays me every month, the matron whispered into the microphone. 500,000 naira. To keep the boy hidden. To make sure he doesn't talk about the fire. Liar. Chantel lunged toward the witness stand, her face twisted in a mask of fury. I picked you out of the gutter. I made you. Sit down, Mrs. Okeke. The judge slammed his gavel. Bailiff, restrain her. Jide wasn't finished. We also have the fire report, Your Honor. Musa, my client's security chief, just uploaded the unredacted files from the insurance company to the court server. The arson in Umuahia was ordered by Apex Horizon, a shell company solely owned by Chantel Okeke. The transfer for the cleanup was signed by her. We have the bank trail. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the silence of a house of cards collapsing. I looked at Adanna in the dock. She wasn't looking at the evidence. She was looking at me. Her eyes were filled with tears, not of fear this time, but of disbelief. She had spent 3 years thinking she was cursed, thinking she was a monster. Now the world knew the truth. The judge picked up the file Jide had placed on his desk. He read the first page. Then the second. His face darkened. He looked up at the police officers holding me. Release Mr. Okeke, the judge ordered. Immediately. The officers hesitated, then unlocked the cuffs. I rubbed my wrists, feeling the blood return. And, the judge turned his gaze to Chantel. Take Mrs. Okeke into custody. No. Chantel screamed. She backed away, knocking over a pitcher of water. You can't do this. I am an Okeke. I am the mother of the heir. Actually, Jide interrupted, delivering the final blow. We have the preliminary DNA markers from the hospital. The embryo, it wasn't yours, Chantel. You were never compatible. You used a donor egg and told Obinna it was yours. But you didn't use an anonymous donor. You used Adanna's egg. I froze. Adanna froze. You wanted the baby to have the peasant strength you despise so much, Jide said, reading from the medical file. Adanna isn't just the surrogate, Obinna. She is the biological mother. Chantel looked at me, her eyes wide with panic. She saw the look on my face. The cold-hearted businessman was gone. In his place was a father protecting his pack. Obinna, please, she begged, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. I did it for us. For the legacy. I love you. I walked up to her. I didn't yell. I didn't strike her. I simply adjusted my torn t-shirt and looked down at her with pity. You don't know what love is, I said quietly. Love is not ownership. Love is sacrifice. Adanna was willing to go to prison to save her brother. You were willing to let a baby die to save your reputation. I turned to the officers. Get her out of my sight. Chantel screamed and kicked as they dragged her away, her curses echoing in the marble hall until the heavy doors slammed shut. Unity returned to the room. I turned to the dock. The judge nodded to the bailiff, who unlocked the cage. Adanna stepped out. She was shaking. I didn't care about the protocol. I didn't care about the judge. I walked over and pulled her into a hug. She collapsed against me, sobbing into my chest. It's over, I whispered into her hair. You are free. Hina's safe. It's over. 6 months later. The sun set over the Lagos Lagoon, casting a golden glow over the Okeke compound. But the house was different now. The cold, museum-like silence was gone. In its place was the sound of laughter. Uncle Musa, catch me. Keen ran across the lawn, a soccer ball at his feet. He looked healthy, his cheeks full, the fear gone from his eyes. Musa, wearing a jersey that was too tight for his muscles, chased after him, pretending to be out of breath. I sat on the terrace watching them. I took a sip of my drink, not expensive champagne but a cold Zobo drink Adanna had made. He has your energy, a soft voice said. I turned. Adanna walked out onto the terrace. She was breathtaking. She wore a simple, elegant Ankara dress that hugged her figure. Her skin glowed with health and peace. She wasn't the terrified maid anymore. She was the lady of the house in every way that mattered. In her arms she held him. Chidubem. God leads me. My son. He was 6 months old now, chubby and strong, with eyes that held the wisdom of an old soul. He had survived the premature birth, the blood transfusion, and the drama of his arrival. He was our miracle. Is he sleeping? I asked, standing up to meet them. Finally, Adanna smiled. He fights sleep just like his father fights board members. I laughed, wrapping my arm around her waist. I don't fight them anymore. I charm them. It's a new strategy. Adanna rested her head on my shoulder. Jide called. The divorce is final. Chantel got 20 years. No parole. She chose her path, I said, looking at the baby. We chose ours. I looked at Adanna. It had been a long road. For the first few months we just co-parented. I gave her space to heal. I gave her a separate wing of the house. I treated her with the respect she had never known. But slowly, over shared meals and late-night feedings, the bond of trauma turned into something else. I fell in love, not with a polished image, but with the woman who had walked through fire and come out carrying water for others. Adanna, I said, turning her to face me. Yes, Obinna? I reached into my pocket. I didn't have a ring yet. I wanted to design it myself this time, something with meaning, not just a rock to show off. But I had something else. I handed her a set of keys. What is this? She asked. The deed to the land in Umuahia, I said. I bought it back. All of it. And I started construction on a new school and a clinic in your mother's name. It opens next month. I want you to run the foundation. Her eyes filled with tears. Obinna? I don't know anything about foundations. You know about pain, I said, wiping a tear from her cheek. And you know about healing. That is all the qualification you need. You are the heart of this family, Adanna. You saved me from a life of cold marble and fake smiles. You gave me a home. She looked at the keys, then at me. She placed her hand on my cheek, her touch warm and grounding. And you gave me my dignity, she whispered. You saw me when I was invisible. She leaned up and for the first time she kissed me. It wasn't hesitant. It was a promise. A seal on a new beginning. In the distance, Keen scored a goal and cheered. In my arms, my son sighed in his sleep. And in my heart, The heavy, cold stone that had been there for years finally crumbled into dust. I looked at the sunset. The storm was over. The healing was complete. Love had won.